Hello.
Hello?
Hi, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm really good. I'm fighting the Hydra right now.
Oh, nice. I guess I should hop on Twitch so I can see what's going on.
Yeah, no problem.
Right. Oh, I have a link. Cool. I guess I'll have to mute it so I don't hear myself.
Yeah, that always
Help.
messes me up.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So yeah, how have you been finding the Hydra lately?
Much better than launch, if I
Cool.
do say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. It's gone through some iterations for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually like really happy with the way you guys made it more fair without making it less hard,
Yeah.
which is like
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, that's something. It's always a consideration, right? We wanna make it challenging as like the last piece of content that there is right now, while at the same time we want it. If you lose, we want you to feel like it's your fault. We don't we don't
Yeah.
we don't want you to feel cheated, especially after slogging through the rest of you know the rest of the underworld to get there. So
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised when you guys took away the walls. That must have been a
yeah.
big decision.
Well, I think what it was just clarity, that because of the way the terrain was set up, there'd be some spots where you'd feel like you were hiding behind a wall and you should be protected, but like a projectile would sort of squeeze between that little obstacle that's there now and what was the wall. Um, so it was just leading to some bad feeling deaths. I think.
Yeah.
It's that thing I was talking about how we want to
And
just
don't come back.
we want it to feel fair,
In the name
as
of
much as
Hades.
possible.
Yeah.
Nice.
What
You
I
running
feel.
with any heat?
Not right now. This was just
No
my
heat,
warm-up
cool.
run. Usually I
Nice.
go with about 50.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. Awesome.
Okay, so why don't we start with the actual interview questions here?
Sure.
Number one is just in playing all four Supergiant games, I've noticed there aren't references to past games hidden in later ones. Is this like a conscious choice by the team, or maybe just a result of always looking forward?
I mean, I think the main
Well, that was interesting.
factor is the decisions that we make are in service of the immersion of the game, and anything that's going to break that immersion, we try to avoid. And so even if it's like references to our other games, that could be one of those things that's immersion breaking, where it makes you
Yeah.
stop and think about something else. But we have had like little tiny Easter eggs kind of sprinkled throughout the games that are hopefully not distracting, because they're subtle enough.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna try a run
choice is made.
with no healing.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. Like I got my 120 heat run.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very pleased that it took me a long time, but I finally like beat it with 120 heat on, and it was I think I squeezed in like right before the Zeus nerf, so I was able to take advantage of lots of power there on the Zeus powers, but yeah, I did it with the
Maxed out
with the
already.
rail and
Oh.
Zeus on attack.
Yeah, yeah. On
Um,
launch day, I actually got the Zeus legendary on the adamant rail.
oh wow, that's amazing.
It's a great video.
I don't even know if I know what the Zeus legendary. I don't even know if I've gotten the Zeus legendary actually.
Oh, really? I've actually gotten all of them on stream except for Athena. Athena won't give me
Whoa.
hers.
Cool. Interesting. I've gotten Athena. Have I gotten Athena's? I don't know if I've got Athena's. That's cool. What is the Zeus legendary actually? I don't think I know.
It's whenever your chain lightning hits something, it splits off into two things. And
Oh dang.
yeah,
Okay. So that's pretty good.
yeah. So it's like actual chain lightning.
Yeah. 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 That's amazing. That sounds really good. Cool. That's awesome.
I've mastered that.
Yeah, I like I got the Aphrodite one. I got like once. It might have changed since I got. I've probably got it 2 times,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it might have changed since I got it. Is it still you like convert an enemy to your side?
Yeah, you can like charm enemies. I
Charm
think
enemies.
that
Yeah,
one's
it's
definitely the weakest of them for now.
it's like
Hungers.
it's interesting because
Maybe I should switch
I
things
guess
up.
it was it's theoretically good if you have like a weak weapon or something, or like a build where you're gonna damage guys a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have like a
There
big
we go.
attack build, I had like a spear spin build or something, and it wasn't a good complement for that because by the time I would convert a guy, they were dead already because
Ready.
I hit them with my big weapon attack.
Yeah.
Say
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah,
no,
he's
I
talking to us
It's
now.
a curse.
Oh,
boy.
yeah.
Say it with me.
I love the new
Blood
look for these.
and darkness.
Oh yeah, no,
Naturally
definitely
little in
Josh.
high abundance
Josh
here.
Barnett takes care of a lot of our effectsy
Blood and
kind of stuff, or
darkness well
2D
indeed.
2D effect stuff, and he sets that up.
Beside it.
We do have a question in chat here.
Yeah.
Ashley, about Ashley Barrett, of course.
You know, Ashley Barrett does backing vocals currently on the Underworld mix of Lament of Orpheus right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, we love working with Ashley, and definitely would like to do it again on this project, but it just depends on there being an appropriate context for it. But yeah, I mean, that's something that is on our radar for sure.
Cool.
May I help you?
So Hades is a roguelike, which is a big departure from previous games. What roguelikes did you look to for inspiration or caution when outlining the game?
Yeah, I mean, you know, several of us on team played a bunch of stuff. I don't know that I've played as many
Aegis.
as some of the people on team, but I know that, I mean, for myself and a few other people really looked at Dead Cells
Where
closely
now?
and thought that the way that they did like the sort of between run advancement thing was really exciting. And that game feels great, and it's really interesting take on the genre. And Rogue Legacy was one a while ago that was really exciting to us at the time, and we thought that turned out really well. And so yeah, I mean, stuff like that. I really have been fascinated by Slay the Spire, which is sort of not your traditional roguelike, but definitely takes a couple of genres that I really enjoy and mashes them up in a really interesting way, like the deck building
Aegis grows
sort of
stronger.
card game
Yeah,
with
sort
like a
of,
dungeon. Yeah,
it mashes up like two big games and makes them into one, and it does it really well.
yeah. I played a ton of that game, and also, you know, I really enjoy one of my favorite games of last year actually was Into the Breach,
What you get.
and that game, it really does a nice job of combining, like, I've never played like a, you know, turn-based strategy roguelike thing before, and that was pretty exciting as well. I'm a big fan of turn-based strategy stuff, so I've really played a ton of that game and enjoyed that immensely.
Cool.
So yeah, I think everybody's specific influences on team are different, but I know those are some of the games that a lot of us have checked out for sure.
All right. So, response to the new Skull Crusher and Gorgon enemies was almost entirely negative due to their high difficulty. How do you, as developers, balance adding content that's powerful and fun for the player and content that will challenge and defeat them?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I personally really enjoyed those enemies, and I haven't seen unanimous
okay.
disdain for those
Yeah,
guys
yeah.
myself, but
I definitely was seeing a lot of whining on the Discord.
yeah, I mean, you know, whining about stuff being hard doesn't
I'm rich.
personally bother me. I think it's fun to have enemies that are hard, you know, in a game like this. And I think that's part of the thing. I mean, obviously, like, it's a balance because we want it to feel fair. Even if they're hard, we want it to feel like if you had you executed what you did differently, you would have cleared the encounter.
Thank you,
Um,
mate.
and so it shouldn't feel cheap.
Right.
And so, yeah, but definitely the combination of those two enemy types together is pretty rough. Getting locked in place and then smashed for a bunch of damage can be pretty rough. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's for me, adding different enemy types that can be really challenging with the wrong loadout, but kind of trivial with the right loadout. I think is fascinating because, especially if that loadout doesn't necessarily match, you know, what you're going to do for the boss or something, what you're going for, can be really interesting and add complexity to the decisions you make on a room-to-room basis.
Mhm.
And so I personally, you know, if you put, say, Athena on just about anything, then the Medusa, the Gorgon heads become a lot less challenging, you know, because you can just kind of deflect their things back at them, and it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Or dash around. If you have the Athena dash, you know, that's that one in particular really, I think, trivializes those enemies a little bit in a fun way. So yeah, I mean, I find it really fascinating. I'm again not the one responsible for incorporating like tuning changes based on community feedback, you know. So so I can sort of, I don't, you know, I'm sort of removed from the the brunt of the complaining.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so you know, I think ultimately we want everything in the game to feel fair, you know, but we certainly want the challenge level to be high, because it's a game that, you know, you're expected to play a bunch of times.
Yeah,
You know,
this is
that's
definitely a much harder game than previous Supergiant games, and like I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think just sort of by nature of the type of the genre, that's the difficulty is something that comes with the genre.
Absolutely.
And you couldn't, if you made an easy game, if you made a game that you could complete in a single run on your first try, it wouldn't be satisfying.
Right.
You know, part of the fun of a game like this is getting better at the gameplay, and then in you know, in the case of this game, or roguelites, I guess technically, is the sort of steady advancement over, you know, run over run, building out your character on a meta level and making choices to advance your character, you know, on a meta level versus on a, you know, on an immediate level, is all that stuff leads to some pretty exciting choices, I think.
Yeah, and if it was easy to get out of the underworld, none of your story would make sense.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. We're trying. I think we're trying our best to incorporate the mechanics of this genre of the kind of game we're making into the story as best as possible, and have that be just sort of one and the same thing.
Cool. Vex Composure in the chat asks, what influences has this game being a roguelike had on writing the soundtrack?
Yeah, I mean, I think one specific way
You're nothing.
that it's had an effect is the bulk of this game is spent out fighting stuff, and so the bulk of the music coverage is for that context.
Yeah.
And so the pieces that are intended to play while you're fighting dudes are like pretty long, with sort of a couple of different levels of intensity. And the way we've set that up is we have basically all the pieces that play while you're sort of traversing the underworld have a full form in a sort of like folk arrangement, and then the entire form again in like a really intense like hard rock arrangement. And the whole thing has a bass stem, sort of guitars stem, and a percussion stem, which also contains some keyboards, some synthesizer stuff. So those stems can play basically in any combination. And then when you get to a boss or a mini boss, the intense part, you know, the intense version of the piece kicks in. And so the idea was that these pieces need to be long enough so that they don't get repetitive over a single instance of you playing, and varied enough so that they don't get repetitive over a bunch of instances of you playing.
Right.
And so yeah, those are some of the considerations that I had to keep in mind when making stuff for this kind of a game, where I know you're going to experience these pieces a bunch, but hopefully they're sort of long enough, and the sort of stem variance adds enough variety to the pieces themselves so that they don't feel repetitive in a negative way, and that the repetition is more of like an association that is positive. You know,
Yeah.
ultimately that's the hope.
I imagine it's kind of weird to remix your own music like that.
Yeah, I mean, I dabbled. You know, we started doing stem-based stuff in Transistor, and did like a similar sort of stem setup for each piece, where each piece had about 3 stems. And then in Pyre, we kind of went overboard and did like 7 or 8 stems per piece, and that was pretty intense. And so we've been doing some sort of stem experimentation for a while, but yeah, it seemed right at home, I think, on this project to do some amount of like stem-based changes.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed when the action heats up, that's when like it's playing like the trailer song and those kind of things.
Yeah. Yep.
Vex, in particular, loves the way the percussion kicks in for combat and Transistor.
Awesome. Yeah. We're doing a sort of similar thing in this game as well. Actually, when you defeat, a room, when you enter a room, the percussion kicks in. A room with enemies, that is. And then when you defeat the last enemy, the percussion quiets down and it shuts off. So yeah, we're trying to do like have that be part of the dynamic system in this game as well.
Cool. If there had been early access versions of previous Supergiant games, what do you think you might have changed or added?
It's an interesting question, because
The power of the gods.
the previous games that we've made, I just think by the nature of what kind of games they are, don't really lend themselves to an early access model. They're just sort of self-contained, kind of, one, maybe 2, maybe 3 playthrough experiences, where you get sort of everything there is after once or twice through the game. With the exception of Pyre, there's a lot of smaller variants in sort of smaller ways on Pyre, but I feel like the other games that we've made just aren't really the kinds of games where early access would make sense. So, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I feel like the tuning, there's noodly tuning stuff that had we done early access would have maybe changed, but again, it's just a whole different beast.
Anything about your soundtracks or sound design that you like look back on and maybe cringe about or wish you could change?
Not really. Everything we've shipped, I've been happy with the way it's turned out in game. I think maybe sort of a hindsight thing on Pyre was just we did a really, like I was saying, really granular stem setup for Pyre, where we had like 7 or 8 stems on a lot of pieces, and that on some lower spec machines might actually influence performance a little bit, because we have so many stems playing at the same time. So maybe I would have found a way to just not have so many stems were I to do it all over again. but other than that, I'm pleased with how it all came together.
Cool. In pulling from an existing mythos, how do you draw the line between things that can't be changed and things that can for your version of the mythology?
That is an interesting question, and I feel like I probably can't provide a complete answer to it. Greg Kasavin is our writer and creative director, and he, I'm sure knows what that line is.
Yeah.
But, I will say that finding an interesting take on the existing mythology, I think, is an important aspect of what we're trying to do. Finding a sort of modern, relatable take on this stuff, I think is a priority for Greg, and part of what makes it interesting for us, I think, to work in this area. So, trying to get to the sort of the meat of what is the sort of intent behind the mythology, what's the idea behind it, what's the relatable sort of modern application, or something that makes a little bit more sense in a modern context,
right?
Or in the context of like a family drama, which a lot of this is, and a lot of what the original mythology stuff is basically, it's just this big dysfunctional family of gods, and how they air their grievances with one another and sort out their problems.
Yeah, that's always been relevant since the ancient Greek times, and now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think drawing upon that aspect
help
of
keep
the
me going.
mythology has been I know an influence for Greg, but I don't know that I can speak much more to that unfortunately,
Right.
just because I don't I
Looks like I've got a choice to make.
I once it's it comes to me like basically once it's written and to do voiceover stuff.
Here's a more sound designer question for you.
Sure.
As a sound designer, what are the most underappreciated sound effects in games that you notice every time? And what's a sound in Hades that you're really proud of?
Underappreciated sound effects in games. I actually really like cool UI sounds, like menu sounds, and sounds where one thing I've come to feel is that when you see stuff, when you see any sort of visual effects or anything, I've come to just sort of expect there to be an associated sound effect.
I'll make every strong
And
count.
so it's fun for me when games have put a lot of care into the like texture of their sort of menu sounds, or just the sort of the feel of their sounds that accompany interesting visual effects and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would definitely say menu sound effects are one that goes underappreciated.
For sure, yeah, and it's not something you think about much, but having a sort of silent menu where you toggle through stuff silently, this is just like, you don't realize how unsatisfying that is until you do it, So I guess it's that kind of sound stuff. Sounds I really enjoyed. This is not menu stuff. I mean, I really enjoyed making the mirror. As far as menus go, the Mirror of Darkness stuff was really fun for me to make, and was an earlier set of sounds that I made for Hades that I was really happy with how they turned out. And I felt like had an interesting characteristic that was sort of expressive of the vibe of the game and the world and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think the sounds for the in this last update for the Adamant Rail and for Dionysus were super fun to make.
Yeah.
Just because for the rail, I don't get a lot. I haven't tried to make any sort of gun stuff since Bastion, basically. So it was fun, kind of. I've acquired a bunch of interesting sound libraries and stuff since then. so it's been fun to be able to dig into my libraries and pick out some cool stuff and combine them and mess around with them. So that's been fun. And the Dionysus stuff was just like it's just wine and wine related sounds. It's
I love
sort of
the cork popping noise. Actually.
yeah. People celebrating and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun to do as well.
Is that laughter like a stock thing, or is that where'd you get the laughter?
I got the laughter. That's a sound library laughter.
Oh, okay, nice.
from my sound ideas sound library combined with a bunch of other stuff. And yeah, generally I tend to use library sounds, but when I do, I try to combine them with other things or process them in some way so they're not just naked library sounds.
Yeah.
All right, that's quite enough.
Narc says the best sounds are Charon's sounds.
Charon, Logan Cunningham does those. He's the voice of Charon, doing the
Yeah.
groans, various groans. We recorded, I don't know, probably 50 different groans or something for Charon,
That's so
for different
funny.
contexts. Yeah.
I'm just laughing, imagining you sitting at your computer looking seriously, playing two different groans over and over and being like,
Which is the right one
Yeah.
for this context? Yeah, no, that's what Greg does mostly. We record. We have a sentiment, and we record a groan of this is a groan that means,
The power of the sea.
means this phrase, and we
Yeah.
try to convey that as best we can when we're recording it. Basically.
Cool. Vex actually is a musician in chat. He says, I've noticed you have an Akai MPK Mini. Hope I pronounced that right. How much of your writing is done using it, and are there any little tricks or fun things it's allowed you to do?
Mostly it's just I just use it to input, chords or when I'm
Guess I get it right.
doing the sort of melodic stuff with the keyboard part or something. I've been using it for that, but not. I mean, I tend not to write with it that much, just because I tend to go with stringed instruments first. And for this game, a lot of the melodic keyboard stuff has actually been like a little analog keyboard from the 80s that I have, this Casio SK1.
Oh.
So I've been used like for all the like spooky melodic sounds that kind of sound like a theremin. That's that thing with a bunch of effects on it.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, so but mostly I use that for like just inputting chords into MIDI. It has the pads. I don't use the pads a lot. I do most of my drum inputs on like I have an electronic drum set, and I'll play parts in with that. So yeah, it's cool. I like the thing. Sometimes I'll use the like expression knob, or whatever it is, the little expression joystick, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just like sort of a bare bones little MIDI inputter that's as small as, takes up as little real estate on my desk as possible. That's sort of the reason for that guy.
Nice.
Yep.
Vex says he loves the theremin sound.
Awesome.
What do you hope that a casual player gets out of Hades, and what do you hope a hardcore player gets out of the game?
Yeah, this is something that we're really trying to account for on team.
Yeah, I imagine.
We ultimately, I think we would like a sort of average player to be able to reach the end of the story with enough effort.
Darkness.
Yeah, and darkness. Yeah, just sort of, if they keep trying, they'll get there. That sort. You have to eventually develop the sort of muscle memory and skill to beat the bosses. But I think with enough help from darkness and sort of the meta upgrades, that you'll be able to get to the end of the story. And part of the thing about this game is that the story is revealed in part through dying a bunch.
Yeah.
So that is sort of built in. But eventually, we want you to be able to like beat the last boss, or whatever that is. And for sort of more hardcore players, I think we're trying to keep the game interesting for like high level players who want to do runs over and over again, by having places for you to put your resources that you've amassed. And the sort of packed system is an attempt to keep the game fresh for players who sort of mastered the base game as it stands right now.
Yeah.
And so we definitely are trying to consider both types of player in as we go.
When you're working on a creative project like Hades, do you find it difficult to take your mind off of it, or do you have a very clear work-life balance?
Yeah, I think I used to, when I used to work from home, I lived in New York and telecommuted before the studios based in San Francisco, and all the way through Transistor and the beginning of Pyre, I lived in New York, and the team was based in California.
Yeah.
And so I would work from my apartment, and my schedule of working was sort of unorthodox, and I would just sort of work when I felt inspired, and I would do it in bursts, and I would take a bunch of breaks, and I would kind of do it all the time, because I had the luxury of being able to do that. Then in 2014 I had a kid. I moved to California. So I'm trying deliberately not to be working all the time, because I want to have some separation there for the rest of my life. So I think, to answer the question, I used to kind of have it always kind of percolating, and be always sort of working a little bit, whereas now I try to designate certain times of the day, working hours for being productive. And sometimes I'll put in some weekend time or evening time, but generally I try to keep it like while I'm at the office or while I'm quote unquote working. That's the time when I have it on my brain. But it, if I'm writing music,
divine protection.
generally
Next time.
that's the time where I'll still be thinking about it, kind of even when I'm not working, because if I have a piece I'm trying to figure out, and mulling it over helps me sort of get there eventually. Even if it's sort of subconsciously thinking about a riff and how I'm going to connect it to this other part and what I want the piece to feel like and all that stuff. So sometimes that'll occur in off hours.
Okay. Cool. This one actually comes from my girlfriend's sister, who is a huge fan of all the games. She's the one who got my girlfriend into it, who got me into the games, who
Awesome.
So
Cool.
yeah, when you're writing songs, especially ones like Bound Together or the vocal songs for Transistor, do you only think about the context of the game, or do you think about how it would sound or what it means to someone that's never played the game?
So for me, I tend the sort of impression of people who don't have game context is definitely secondary and not really a big consideration when I'm working on the pieces. I want to, it enters my head, but it's not, that's not the priority for me. It's really trying to make a satisfying in-game experience of the music. That's sort of top priority for me. And sometimes especially for the non-lyrical pieces, I'll make sort of special mixes of them to be digested specifically out of context of the game. Like for Pyre, I did that for just about every track. I had to make a sort of special mix of it for the soundtrack, just because of the way they'd all been set up. And actually for Bound Together specifically, I made a different, like a no spoilers version of the song, essentially, where it, the in-game, there are alternate lyrics per character depending on whether or not they ascended.
Yeah, it tells you all their endings. I liked that.
And in the soundtrack, I did like a third neutral version where it's just like they stayed true till the end, and it doesn't really say one way or the other what happened to them.
Yeah.
So I do consider it, but it's sort of like I primarily focus on what's going to appear in the game, and then
the next one.
The rest is sort of a bonus.
Bone Hydra. It's been too long.
Suisun asks kind of a technological question.
Mhm.
What do you think about, like, where are we on procedurally generated music and soundtracks? Do you think there'll ever be an algorithm that can make those?
I don't know. I mean, again, because that's not really, I have no idea, basically, is the short answer, because I don't really, I'm not really focused on that. I'm focused on the opposite thing of that, which is crafting those things,
Yeah.
So I think what I'm doing is sort of at odds with that in a lot of ways. I think we have, something that I do is as I incorporate sort of procedural implementation to pieces that are crafted. That's what all that stuff is, with dynamic stems changing based on what's happening in the game. The drums kicking on when you're fighting enemies is a simple example of that. And all that stuff is meant to vary the experience and tailor it to how you're playing. I think like a fully procedurally generated soundtrack, you're still going to have to, I mean, I suspect you'd still have to define parameters and say, okay, this part is going to be, playing this scale. Here are the options, and you can play. I mean, I think that is sort of composing still,
Yeah.
So you have to, even just like telling the computer what it's allowed to choose or not is still sort of part of the composing process, if you are going to do procedurally generated stuff. So now having a computer write the music completely and just decide all that stuff, that's something that I have no idea about.
Cool.
I'm sure it's on the horizon, and I know that people are experimenting with that stuff, So I don't really know how close it is to being like a replacement for people doing that, you know.
When you're working on a soundtrack or a piece of music, do you tend to wait until you have a solid draft, or do you like to bounce ideas off of others during the creation process?
How many of these are there?
I tend to wait until I have something I want to show people, because you know, my main reason for that is if I show something to someone in an incomplete state, then the notes that I may get back are not really that valuable, because chances are they're going to be notes on stuff I intend to change or complete. And if I say, well, here's the idea, but it's going to have, you know, this production thing I haven't done yet, and it's going to have like a string part, and it's going to have this and that, like, my idea of what that sounds like is much more complete than someone else's, even if I describe it to them. So I think the most efficient thing generally for me is to just kind of finish my idea as best as possible before I try to, you know, solicit feedback. Just in terms of efficiency and having like valuable feedback.
Yeah, it
you
makes
know,
sense.
if feedback on the actual thing versus feedback on what someone imagines it might be based on my description of it. You know.
That's kind of funny in the context of an early access game.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, but this, you know, it's interesting because the stuff that we're presenting is stuff that is, to the best of our ability, a fully realized idea. You know,
Yeah.
it's not half ideas. None of the things that we're presenting are ideas that aren't really complete. I mean, obviously we want to polish things, but the state that this stuff is in, hopefully, is closer to like a complete thought than. You know, this is I would I would show people this level of completion for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does not feel like a half-finished game.
Yeah, and that's sort of the idea.
Over there.
Yeah, but that's a funny point. Yeah, that in the context of the access game, yeah.
Cool.
The often patient Zagreus
By the way,
appears to take
that's a
repeated
run of the
gifts
game
in
with
stride, and
no
so
healing and only 1,000
here
darkness.
comes another one for
Yeah,
him.
that's pretty intense.
It's I love the way you can tune the difficulty to your own
Yeah.
levels. It made getting the 120 run a lot more interesting than
Yeah,
just like turning a difficulty knob up.
Showed that
exactly.
Supergiant
Yeah, I
on
was really excited about the addition of a couple of the parameters that we added in the last update. Just in particular the
Congratulations.
I forget what it's called, but it's the one that increases the costs.
Oh,
Of
the convenience fee.
Yeah, convenience fee was really fun. It's like it says another strategy one, you know, instead of the ones that just like make the enemies harder, you know. I think are in combination with those kinds of things, the ones that are more like meta strategy things are really fascinating.
I'm a particular fan of the one that makes enemies high speed, because it feels like I'm playing turbo mode from Enter the Gungeon.
Yes. Yeah, it's really hard. That one's so hard, especially in combination with the ones where they have more damage or hell, I mean, anything that makes them better in any other way. That one's so hard. Because the thing that's crazy about that one is it makes the enemies faster, but you're not any faster. You still have the same amount of frames of animation before you can cancel out and move and and dodge and recover from your dodge. So having the fast enemies, especially with stuff like the numbskulls or the louts, can be really tough just because they're so fast.
Yeah, it's so funny, the louts, like you might call them louts, but they're no slouches.
No, they're not. Their charge up time gets really, really fast when you have them like a full 25% faster or whatever it is.
So speaking of which, why don't we turn that up as far as it'll go and play a run
intense.
like that?
Yeah, if like that were if that's the only modifier, we'd probably be all right. But do you need to go back and distribute your darkness again?
Yes.
You may have to. Otherwise, you're just gonna have 1,000 darkness distributed. Yeah.
And thank goodness you guys added the hold button.
Yes. Yeah, that was good, because now that we actually have like a lot of stuff, it actually might take you a while to sit there and press the button a bunch of times. Yeah.
Yeah, I think somebody counted like if you wanted to do like a full heat no darkness run and then turn all that off, it would take you like something like 120 clicks.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Well, the game wants me to use the bow, and that is my favorite weapon. So
There you go. You
Fools
can't.
way to say
Who
no.
are you to? Who are you to say no? You know. Yeah.
So, I have a question that actually is influenced by my personal life. Does perfectionism ever get in the way of your creative work? Do you have any advice for those of us that have that issue?
Yeah. It's one of those things that, of course, throughout the years I've come to terms with that. You want something to be as good as you can make it.
Yeah.
Before you chuck it over the fence,
Mm-hmm.
but you gotta, I think the more you make stuff, the better you are at recognizing your ability to, like, how far you're able to take something. If you can't think of anything else, there's no point. You know what I mean? If it's as good as you can make it, then that's the point at which, even if it's not perfect, which it won't be ever, just coming to terms with the idea that, okay, well, once it's as good as I can make it, that's when I send it off, and just sort of understanding what that point is. Where are you going to be? Where are you satisfied with it? What is that point for you? And figuring all that out, I think is really valuable. And I think a lot of that is just a matter of just making stuff a lot. And because the more you make things, and the more you
Don't cross me again.
have creative projects that you complete, the less precious about them you become. If that makes sense. So part of what prevents somebody or me in the past from saying, okay, it's time to chuck stuff, to put it out there, is the feeling that you can continue to improve it first, or that there's going to be that, oh no, it's not right, this idea is too important, and if I do it wrong, I'll screw it up. That idea that you might kind of screw it up by continuing to work on it, or making some decisions, like none of the decisions that you're making are satisfactory to you, because of this sort of, because you're too attached to the idea. I think that diminishes over time. The more songs you write, the more stuff you make, the more whatever your medium is, the more the more drawings you complete, the more paintings, whatever it is, it's going to become less precious over time, and that just allows you to improve your ability to just sort of make things, and declare things complete enough, which I think is an important thing to be able to do for anybody who does anything creative.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's see you
How many
avoid
songs
this.
do you think you've made? Like, just guessing. Ballpark.
Pieces for all the, like, including all the sort of non-lyrical things, like all the pieces for the games and stuff.
Yeah, sure, and even like outside of game development.
Yeah, so I mean, gosh. I mean, some number of something in the low hundreds.
Yeah.
I think is my best guess. There was the Pyre soundtrack had 40 things on it, basically. Had 39 pieces.
Yeah, and then there were like 2 other soundtracks to go along with it.
Yeah, those are just sort of variations of. I just call it 40, because those are just basically variations of the same thing, different arrangements and stuff. So 40.
Hey Zach, ever see a fellow by the name of Orpheus down there?
the 40s,
Is talking about
I bet you have.
Orpheus.
And I have had a fun
Yeah.
thought, a little jest that maybe we could try. If
There
we
you
could
go.
Have a little harmless fun.
Have you unlocked Orpheus's? I guess you probably haven't.
You have my full and complete attention.
His second song?
I don't think I've unlocked the full song.
There you go.
But I have told him about that one time that I totally
There you
killed
go.
a Hydra without even looking.
Yeah. I think this is the real sort of start of that storyline. So hopefully you'll be able to unlock that song. That's cool. But yeah, so I'd say somewhere in like the low hundreds is my guess.
Nice.
How about another?
Is there anything on the game that you like that you were surprised by the reaction to?
Yeah, one of the things I think that surprised us generally on team
Mm-hmm.
was how quickly people finished the content that we had there available, and how, like, what percentage of people did that, you know?
Yeah.
Because you know, we tried to tune the game to be pretty challenging, and we thought, geez, this is, you know, to get through all the content that we have in the game, there's like a lot of stuff. I would say it's like just about as much content in total as we've had in any other game that we've made, like in a finished state. So the fact that I was just surprised that people got through the content so quickly. So that was surprising to me.
What's for sale?
I for one am absolutely overjoyed that this game is not only this fun, but that it's only getting better.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, it's been super fun to work on too. Honestly, I'm really glad, especially because we're going to be working on it for quite a while longer.
Good idea. Thank you, mate.
Yeah, so it's yeah, it's certainly been a lot of fun to work on. Yeah.
So, speaking of like the themes in songs, like the ones in Transistor, do you like to put meanings or like themes beyond the ones in the game, beyond those that are like talked about in the game?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it depends on the particular song and the context and all that stuff. I mean, each project is different too, you know. I think for every game, when I make a song, I try to incorporate a lot of the sort of background information that the player isn't necessarily privy to. You know, Greg, for each project, has like a massive game world document that he maintains throughout, and you know, like for Pyre, for example, there was all this information about the Titans and all this other stuff, and the Titan stars and all that, and the you know, the sort of the history of the place, and I incorporated as much of that as I could into you know, when I was writing the lyrics of the songs. And for Transistor, you know, it was a whole different story, because the point of view of the songwriter, I was trying to write all the songs from Red's point of view.
Yeah.
And so the idea was that these were songs that Red, the recording artist, you know, had written and recorded previously, like prior to the events of the game taking place. But I wanted them to have relevance to the context in which you experience them in the game at the same time. So the challenge was to try to have, you know, try to sort of load the tunes with as much meaning as I could. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, you know, on Bastion, the context for the tunes in that is that, you know, Build That Wall is an old Ura wartime song, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the idea, that it's sort of like a song that Zia heard as a kid from her father, you know, and that sort of like, and that was part of the context for me, was the idea is that these are folk songs. And so writing a folk song versus writing a song from a specific artist's point of view versus, you know, they're all different animals.
Yeah. I have to apologize. Bastion is actually the game of yours I've played the least.
Oh, that's fine. There's no need to apologize.
Yeah, I started playing Transistor, and then I went back to Bastion, and I think
Yeah.
that's the wrong order to do things in.
Yeah.
But,
Sure, yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's, you know, we do have, if you do want to, you know, once you get through enough of Bastion, we do have like a dynamic difficulty system in that game if you want to crank it up and make it tough. Yeah, we got the shrine system in there where you sort of invoke the gods, and make them angry in different ways, and they add specific challenges, you know, much in the same way the pact system in here does.
I always thought the variable difficulty in Pyre was a lot like tougher and a little bit less rewarding.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, the difficulty in that one, I think the reason it's tougher is because instead of fighting like hordes of enemies, you're fighting like a fairly evenly matched AI. So when you make them like a super player, the challenge there really is felt a lot more, I think, than in the context of like making, you know, each one of these little numbskulls a little harder.
Yeah.
You know, you're making like the 3 AI opponents that you're facing be like super duper AI, or have sense. So I think the nature of that,
You shall regret
the
this.
nature of that for sure is it gets really tough.
Yeah.
I really like, my favorite way to play Pyre. The sort of story mode of Pyre is the true Nightwing mode, where you have to use the Titan stars, and they're available like right from the beginning of the game.
Oh yeah,
And it makes
I haven't actually gone back and replayed since New Game Plus came out.
Yeah, it's really intense, and the thing that I think it really forces you into a thing that we sort of always intended for that game was, we wanted you to sometimes lose matches and keep going. But what's interesting, you know, people are so, one thing we didn't really count on was that people are so conditioned to just not lose. You know, people would just sort of restart if they lost, or just like save scum, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess we didn't really count on that. But part of the idea is to have the game sort of proceed and have there be interesting consequences that you have to sort of deal with either way, whether you win or lose.
Primordial chaos.
And so True Nightwing mode makes it so that sometimes you just kind of have to lose sometimes, because it's hard. And it's really fun. It's super fun. I was able to finish the game on True Nightwing mode like in a satisfying way.
I can use this.
And I really when we were testing that, and I really had, that was for the most fun I had playing through the story mode of that game. I love playing multiplayer Pirates. Like when you have other people of like a similar skill level, it's so fun.
Yeah, I actually held a Pyre tournament at my house on my birthday last year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, like, because on team, you know, a lot of the way we tested tuning and stuff was by playing each other. And, you know, you have a bunch of people who've been working on Pyre for a few years. They're all pretty good at it, you know? So it would get really intense. It was super fun.
One of my greatest achievements as a gamer is I beat Greg using the True Nightwings at PAX.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's fun.
He was a good sport, and he played with me.
Oh sure. Oh yeah, he's a good sport. He was raised on arcade fighting games, you know, so he's a true good sport.
Yeah. And trust me, me and plenty of people in chat can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a fighting game player myself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Greg was pretty serious back in the day, I think. Oh, so fast.
Yeah, Meg is
so fast.
Ridiculous.
Meg is very fast.
Did you see me just get like super comboed there? Oh my god.
Yes.
Yeah.
Meg is very, very fast when you turn up the speed.
she's doing attacks before other attacks are even done.
Yeah, she's just rolling. She's just rolling through. Nice. Got her anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I've played a lot of this game. The 120 heat was seriously satisfying. Once I finally figured out how to tune the heat, what weapon to use.
Yep. Yeah, I had a similar experience. I was bashing my head against 120 heat for like several days. I think it was like a few days where I'd like, okay, I've done the 60 heat. I'm starting to feel like this is doable. and then I would just be like, all right, let's do this. And so I cranked on it for a few days, and ultimately what made it doable was when I sort of retuned how I set up the heat distribution.
Yeah, me too. Same.
Yeah, it was super fun.
All set.
There's some good questions in chat actually. Was there anyone on the team who just destroyed everybody in Pyre? Who like learned super fast or?
I mean, I would say that the sort of the people who would beat each other kind of back and forth a lot were
Just what I need.
Greg, myself, Morgan, and Gavin, probably as the people who like would consistently win matches a lot. And gave each other a tough time, and would sometimes would trade victories.
Yeah. Which characters did you
Probably.
play?
Getting warmer.
I was I'm a double sap kind of guy.
Really?
Yeah.
Lots of defense.
Yeah, well, so like it's just a really like wrecked, strange way to play, and I love Manly's ability where
You want to go?
when everybody on your team is dead, the opponent is slowed. So like basically they can never score when your whole team is dead.
Yeah, they can't like dominate you like that.
Yeah, they just can't. They have to get by you without killing all your dudes.
Yeah,
Somehow.
it's an annoying denial that definitely fits with his character.
Yeah, it's great. And if you're able to use the sort of shield mechanic with Volfred, like the team shield, it can be really really crazy. And even Manly's sapling explosion is really fun if you're able to kind of time that right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fun. And then for the third, it'll either be like a cur or a worm. I think like somebody speedy, or I've also done a crone as the third, just someone who can score and someone who can like
What now?
be offensive and take people out.
Yeah. I found the worms actually like the hardest to use in the
Yeah.
story mode.
Yeah, they're tricky until you sort of, unless you have the sort of right upgrade tree and kind of figure out what to do with them, they can be really tricky. Like there are some really fun combos that like Morgan mostly would use because he's our QA person who'd played the game the most, so he like knew all these weird little combos where like I think the harps have one where they can teleport they can like trade places with the nearest opponent.
Oh yeah, the trade places with the nearest ally, I think it is.
Yeah, the nearest ally. Yeah, that's what it is. Not opponent, obviously. Yeah, ally. And then the let's see. I think it was Faye, May, Bay, whatever you want to call her, had the one where you can teleport to the ball, to the orb.
Oh.
So if you like use those together, you can end up like just if you set it up right and you're on like a big map, you can just have a really crazy score off of a combination of those abilities.
Yeah.
If you like, I think what was it? It was if you run right next to the ball with I forget. It was a very complicated strategy that was cool to see in action.
Yeah, I think the point is that there's a lot of different stuff you can do, and whatever playstyle you can imagine, it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's all viable, and I think a lot of people don't get beyond the take a fast guy and run him around the side strategy, but you sort of have to when you're playing on a higher with more modifiers on. You can't rely on that.
Yeah, or if all your fast guys are, ascending.
Yeah, if your fast guys are knocked out or whatever. Yeah, and part of the way we try to balance that is by having a consequence. If you run it in, that guy sits out, and the fast guys scores aren't worth that much. So you have to figure something out. Oh, another one that's really fun and busted is, or not busted, but is really fun if you can execute it.
Yeah,
is
the colloquial term busted.
Yeah. The imps, the when they die, they create a portal where they died, and you can just sort of run a giant dude. Like if you go right up to the opponent's Pyre, die with an imp, and then you can run a giant dude into with the orb into your portal and just hop right into their Pyre and score for 30,
Yeah.
30 points.
I always I always play the big characters like Zangief
Yep.
and Street Fighter and stuff, and so
yeah.
Jodariel was like very satisfying to me in that regard.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jodie's super fun to use. If you can figure out a way to make her effective on offense, it's really good. There's a keepsake that I think, what is it? It makes her have infinite stamina or something just for the first like little bit of a match, or like every time everybody spawns, and so you just kind of run around and destroy everybody right away.
Yeah.
You just take her and just annihilate everybody with infinite dashes, and then you're able to
I feel strong.
to dunk
Yeah.
at that point, or
Yeah,
throw it in.
There was a I think there's one for
More inferno bombers.
in the story mode for, oh my god, the main character.
Yeah.
Who,
Headwind?
Yeah, Headwind. Goodness.
Uh-huh.
Who, if he kills somebody, he gets like infinite stamina for a while,
Yeah.
and that's so good to use at the beginning of rounds.
Oh yeah, it's great. And I love one thing that was really fun was the shoulder smash or something. I forget what it's called, but it's a nomad upgrade where if you jump into another player who's also jumping, they get knocked out.
Yeah, instead of bumping them, you just like outright destroy them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is super fun. That one's really cool. Especially in PvP, like if you're playing against a person, because people, or advanced AI, because they
tend to
love
frame
jump a lot
perfect
more,
jumping, blocking you.
Exactly. So once, good luck doing that when they get wrecked when they try to block you. So that's a lot of fun.
Very important question here. Who is best waifu, Meg or Dusa?
Oh, that's just it's a preference thing. It's all about you. It's all about what you. I mean, I think I'm probably partial to Dusa just because she's very sweet and she's
Don't let it go to your head.
silly.
Yeah.
But Meg is Meg is rad as well.
I was just teasing you.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Vex says, Darren, my man. Alright, Oh, Laken thought that Gay was canon for the Moon-Touched girl's name.
It's
because
whoever.
of her hair color. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I
no,
think-
it's. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, Greg had dynamic stuff that would play for any of the names you picked, so they all should seem like they're canon. Is the idea, right?
Yeah, they all play like no matter what.
Yep.
Like in a voice line, and I
Yep.
my girlfriend and I laughed about that when we were playing it. It's like, oh, they must have had to record so many lines because there were 3 pages of names.
Yeah, I think it was probably like when we decided to have the name choice in there and have those all supported by VO. I think it was like maybe 200 or 100 extra lines just from that decision.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So back to the serious questions, air quotes. Do you feel you're making your best work when you have lots of time or when pressure starts coming?
Come forth, wretches, and stop this
I
meddler.
enjoy deadlines.
Yeah.
And I think they help me. We were talking a little bit about it earlier. How do you get over the sort of perfectionism thing? A deadline. That's how.
Yeah.
It's certainly helpful in overcoming your fear about whether or not something's good enough, because when something is due, it's due. it's better to have something than not have something, right? So you have to sort of hustle, and the part of what's helpful for me creatively about that is a lot of times your first instinct is a good one, and you should try trusting that, and obviously knowing when it's not right is important too, but just sort of seeing where that takes you
Well, that's better.
is a good strategy, I think, for me at least.
Yeah.
And having a tight deadline often can force you to do that. You don't really have a choice but to trust your instincts and to just sort of follow where that goes.
Makes
On
sense.
to the next one.
Yeah, I think just to go back to the moon touch thrill thing, I think the generally accepted name is May, because if you have a blank save file and you go to PvP mode, that's her name.
Yeah. That was sort of the one that we mostly used on team, but as far as we're concerned, there's no like one canonical name for her.
Yeah,
they're
and
all
I love that
equally
concept.
valid.
Yeah, I love that concept of a character whose name is, like, of course RPGs do it all the time, but
Okay,
they
yeah,
don't have
for last
voice
time.
acting.
Yeah. Yeah, if they we don't let you type it in, for that very reason, right?
Yeah,
because we couldn't support that with voice acting.
it's a genuine moment of humor when
Yeah.
you go to the end page and the final one is Bay, and the description is just, this cannot possibly be right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we try to, try to give you a little winky wink, to the player sometimes when.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that one tickled me, and when we had to record all the VO for that one, was pretty silly.
Yeah. I love the voice. I've talked to Logan Cunningham about his
Yeah.
voice for Pyre and everything. So,
Yeah.
I'm somewhat of an aspiring voice actor,
Oh, fun.
but yeah. It seems like
Yeah, that.
Oh, it seems like what he's doing when he's recording, like standing up or sitting down, really affects what he does. Do you have any like similar like tricks for getting in the mood to write a certain song?
Oh, interesting. Song. It depends. I mean, sometimes if I'm trying to do something that isn't just squarely within my comfort zone, I'll kind of look at a bunch of different stuff, and if I'm trying to write something in like a crazy time signature or something, and I know that that's going to be a part of it, I'll go and like look at a bunch of stuff and check out weird Dream Theater songs and just like kind of look around. I'll just sort of look for inspiration in places and see if there's something that an ingredient I can pull from somewhere that I can reinterpret and will inspire me to do something in that vein, but not exactly like it,
Yeah.
And for me, that's always been helpful, is to look at specific things for inspiration, and kind of cherry pick stuff about those things that I like and may want to incorporate in some way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When I was working on Transistor, in particular, a few artists were really important to me tonally, as inspirations for what I did on that game, and Imogen Heap, York, Radiohead, even some like Nada Surf and some other stuff in there as well. But those are sort of the big ones for me on that game. Imogen Heap in particular. I sort of modeled my idea of Red after like an Imogen Heap type, or like a Portishead, Imogen Heap kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Some combination of those things.
The plus 50% speed Hydra is terrifying.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. Yeah.
And don't go back.
Yeah. Imagine plus 500% damage as well. That's
Yeah.
pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was telling Amir, I think that the maximum, I think the speed increase should scale up with how much heat it gives you. Was sort of one of my thoughts, because 10% speed is fine. Plus 50% speed is like really bust. Like you're so. I mean, if you have any other things that make the enemies hard, it's real hard.
Yeah.
So like, just the way that sort of multiplicative on the other stuff just seems like it should increase in value a little bit. Like maybe the last 3 or 4 ticks are worth 3 or 4 instead of 2. You know?
Yeah, the same way like which one? I think the healing one does that too.
Yeah, exactly. Some of them sort of increase as you take more levels of it, like the Tenebrous Veil, the like no choices. You know, having 2 choices isn't nearly as hard as only having no choices. You know, like having 1 choice. So that goes 5 and then 10 heat for those. So yeah, that's cool.
I think the I don't know about the new patch, but
Someday I'll go
previously
even farther.
there was no way you could do a 120 heat run without turning up damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's such an important one.
Yes, we added, I think there's enough stuff now that you don't have to do damage. I'm pretty sure there's 180 total heat available now.
Yeah, that's right.
So that, and you can get a max of 50 from the damage one. So yeah, you can definitely do it without any damage.
Go to your room.
I did my 120 heat one without any speed increase. I did like
Give me the
maybe
best
like
deal you've got.
250% damage, and I kind of like spread it around.
Mhm.
I don't think I did any extra enemies, and I don't think I did any extra speed, but I think I did a little bit of everything else at least.
Yeah, the way I found to do it
Let's make some
was
adjustments.
no death insurance and as little enemy health as possible. I think I could do it with no death insurance, no pain tolerance, and then like a little bit less shared misery.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But max everything else.
Interesting, because I find the death insurance to be a lot easier than the health increase,
Oh, really?
because the health increase on bosses is way harder
Yeah.
and even on big enemies like you know, like the Lout or the for example, or the Wretch, the basic Wretch thug.
Are you seeing what I'm doing on
yeah,
screen?
yeah.
Just fiddling with the character. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But yeah, I think the yeah, that because the health, because those guys have a bunch of health, so when you increase their health, it's more than 1 or 2 additional hits.
Mhm.
Whereas death insurance is just like tag them with anything, you know.
Yeah.
And so I did it with max death insurance and maybe like 10 or 20% health increase. I didn't do shared misery, and I didn't do whipped frenzy, and I did maybe like 25 ranks of that or something like that, or vicious torment.
Mhm.
And I did like full grim inevitability, full tenebrous veil,
Maxed out already.
full convenience fee, take a little pain tolerance.
Should
Yeah,
we
something like
try?
that.
Should we try a 120 heat run?
Oh dang. I mean, it's up to you.
Hit the limit.
Let's.
Oof.
Hmm.
I think what I did is I did Stifling Darkness maybe almost maxed. I did it
Yeah.
2 ranks away from maxed or something, or 1 rank, yeah.
Yeah, but the last ranks are so valuable.
They are, but I just got that. I'd rather have an extra death insurance and another whatever dash, you know.
Mhm.
So I think what I did is I put that into just enemy health or something. Just 10 points of enemy health. Oh dang. You're going full whip frenzy?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Let's do it.
intense.
Why not?
Maxed
Triple
out
damage,
already.
no
Oof.
healing, 50%
Jeez.
faster.
Pain.
It's a bold move. Very bold. So that's interesting. You just go, yeah. I did 2 dashes and 2 death defiances, I think.
Oh yeah, you need as many
Push the
death
limit.
defiance as you can.
You
carry.
need all the death defiance that you can get, yeah. And I think with 500 heat, you can only get 2.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Some extra cast and maybe.
Yeah, and that's pretty much, you get 1 or 2 more things, basically.
Yeah.
I did thick skin, I think, is what I did.
Hmm.
as much as I could. I think I did like a rank of thick skin for the like 5 extra health.
For
just
the
in,
5
you know.
extra. I think I'll
then
take the backstab damage because it seems
Yeah.
almost random. I just realized I have like a little bit left over.
Reach the
There we go.
limit. Done.
Boiling blood, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we got some questions in chat. Do you still have time?
Yeah, sure. I got a little bit of time left.
Okay. Um, so we saw in the documentary that the Chaos voice went through a lot of development. What kind of plugins or like FX were used on the Chaos voice?
It's mostly this plugin called by this company Urcam. I think that's what their company's called, and it's Trax, Trax, Urcam Trax 3, and it's I know that they use that on like the Mass Effect games, on some of the Aliens and other things like, you know, it's like it's one of those kinds of plugins that I just we use on Pyre as well for a lot of the voice processing, and that's something where I just like emailed, you know, or posted on like a audio, you know, game audio forum, was like, hey, what is the plugin everyone uses for this? Like what? And I tried a couple of the recommendations, and that one was my favorite.
Oh wow, I didn't know that Tenebrous Veil now shows you the stuff you're not getting. That's
Yup.
cruel.
Yup. It's the
Cool.
best.
Coroner
Oh
grows stronger.
dang.
I'm gonna take the extra special. The bow special is now like very usable, which I'm
Yeah,
very
you
happy
can
about.
cancel out of it a little sooner, so it's, you know, it's not so bad.
Mm-hmm.
If you get, you know, Zeus on that or something, or Dionysus, pretty good.
Useful Idiot asks, what artists are you drawing inspiration from for Hades?
Yeah, I mean, for Hades, it's interesting because it's I think maybe fewer specific artists and more sort of general vibes for me. Like some of I'm listening to stuff for production inspiration more than anything else. Like the sort of the newer Alice in Chains records, like not the last one, but the one right before it, the one that came out like maybe 2-3 years ago, has like, it's just so heavy, and I wanted to just sort of break down why it was so heavy and what made it feel so just like crunchy and crazy. So that's an influence production wise, and on some of the sort of riffier heavy stuff that I've been doing. And that's been a lot of fun to try to dig in and make stuff that's like, you know, has more intensity from a sort of production standpoint and sonic standpoint.
There's something.
Cool.
So that's one thing. Alice in Chains of all things. Also, you know, like my friend Grant Henry, who does like Metroid Metal and some other things. He had a Marble Madness cover album that he did. That's like a kind of like proggy metal thing that I found really fascinating, and I've been just sort of trying to listen to a little bit more kind of proggy stuff. Oh, actually, there is one specific thing. There's a Scandinavian folk artist called Vartina, I think is the name, and they have a crazy they have some crazy time signature stuff that was interesting to me, that I've been trying to implement a little bit, like the time signature for Through Tartarus, is that the name of it? What's it called? Something like that. I think it's something like that.
Oh, the name of the song.
Yeah, the name of the song. It's the sort of trailer music. That one is in basically the same time signature as this particular Vartina song. I thought was really fascinating. You know, pretty different riff, but when you have like a 21/8 compound meter, it's like it's a distinctive feel for sure. So I've been looking at stuff like that for some inspiration.
You busy, Zacharias?
For sure.
Thought maybe I could interest you in some of these old hunting tricks of mine.
Let's see. Oh yeah. Has making music for a game in early access changed the way you develop the soundtrack in the grand scheme of things? Like, is your development process different because of early access?
That's an interesting question. I think the main way in which it is different is just the sort of cadence at which the new music occurs.
Better.
My personal goal is to have new music included with every update.
Oh.
And so far we've done that and plan to continue to do that.
Numbskulls.
You know, oftentimes, hey, we're doing a new area, we need new music, you know, or we sort of fully scope out all of the music that has to occur for this one section of the game. In this case, you know, knowing that we were going to release what we were going to release when the game launched, you know, all the stuff in the game needed coverage, and so I had to do that. But, you know, for example, I think maybe eventually there'll be one more piece of music that plays in Tartarus, and then maybe there'll be another piece of music that plays in Asphodel, and I'll sort of, you know, distribute tracks as I'm able to crank them out throughout the development process.
Yeah.
And then trying to combine that with covering, you know, whatever needs coverage that is new, you know, new areas and new stuff. So yeah, I see in chat, yeah, it looks like there will probably be at least 12 more pieces of music, and that seems pretty feasible to me. So it's going to be a pretty big soundtrack ultimately, I think. Probably closer to Pyre in terms of the size of the soundtrack than any of the other games.
Nice. I especially like this song, the boss song.
Oh, cool. I only turn the volume up so here.
I'm not sure what this is called.
Yeah, this is the one I was talking about.
Yeah.
This is the one in 21.8.
Nice.
Yeah. This is that one's pretty intense.
I cut off the end by grabbing the boon.
That's all right.
Let me try and do something for that.
Good night, Knock. We've got a vote for Artemis best waifu in the chat.
Oh, listen, it's your prerogative, you know.
I was intrigued because earlier in a Q&A somebody asked, one of the questions that was answered by Greg was will Zagreus like find someone he falls in love with, and Greg's answer was just, you know, his usual very cryptic, you could say he already has.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Thank the gods.
So
Blood and darkness.
the
Death
Switch
is
releases
inescapable.
of your previous games are really exciting.
Awesome.
Did you do any work on those?
I just basically played them and made sure that the game sounded the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
You know, I think I put together trailers. I put together trailers for the Switch versions, which just involved slapping a different end slate onto the trailers that we already had, basically, and there were a couple of shots where we had buttons that I replaced with new game capture from the Switch, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was pretty. Yeah, I didn't have to do much. We had a couple of teams helping us out with those ports, so my personal involvement with those was not huge. There's not generally a lot of audio work to be done on a port unless something is really messed up.
Yeah.
Now to collect.
Nice.
Yep.
I'll earn your favor yet.
There was also, I believe, a physical release of Bastion and Transistor, which were...
Just Bastion so far.
Oh, just Bastion, yeah.
Yep.
Which is the first time those have been in a physical box.
Yeah, never before. So that was really exciting for us because we just sort of assumed that
Let's see what's up for sale.
that maybe wouldn't happen just because, you know, we had no idea whether or not that would ever come together. But yeah, the sort of opportunity lined up, and yeah, we're really happy to be able to put that together.
Cool. Yeah. Do you have a box?
Oh, I got a box. Sure.
Nice.
Yeah, I got a Bastion box. Yeah, it's cool. It's you know, that it's so funny that it feels like so long ago that we made that game at this point, but it's It's not. I mean, it's not that. It's 2011. It's not. It's when it came out. It's not. Not
Yeah.
forever ago. Less than a decade. So.
Yeah, but it does, like, you guys have come a long way since then. Since,
Yeah,
like,
we've been trying to keep busy for sure.
yeah, I was so surprised when this game was announced.
Yeah, no, that I'm glad that was the desired effect. We wanted people to be shocked and excited about it and all that stuff. So hopefully it had that effect. We were really happy we were able to kind of keep it a secret as long as we were able to. So that felt like you know, sort of Mission Impossible style heist of sorts to do that on the DL.
Oh yeah, especially in today's like online
Yeah,
climate.
and to not have anything leak or anything like that. That felt like a feat. So yeah, we were pleased to be able to do that.
Cool. Yeah, the documentary has been fascinating to watch. The developing hell. Is it weird having like cameras with you guys sometimes?
Not really. I mean, we've done, you know, back in the day, like way long ago, we did a little bit that building the Bastion thing with Giant Bomb, and so we've done a little bit of this before. So it's not totally foreign. So yeah, I mean, it's been really fun to be able to document the process. Honestly, just to be able to kind of give people a look into what we're doing, and I think it pairs really well with the early access thing. You know, I think the idea that that players get to look inside the development process and see exactly how we're incorporating feedback and sort of how we're dealing with the development cadence and the development cycle of you know, putting something out every 4 weeks. You know.
Yeah. Speaking
Wow,
of which,
look at all those arrows.
Yeah, the improved special thing is so much more fun with like the usable bow special.
Yeah,
Oh,
for sure.
God, I just walked right into this.
Oh no. One little buff that I think was really cool was the change to the way Death Defiance works,
Yeah,
which
a lot
makes
of
it
people-
now. It's now a percentage of your health that it heals to instead of a set amount, so that it actually makes Centaur Hearts better, like by a lot.
Nice.
Especially when you can't heal, because Centaur Hearts are your only means of healing essentially.
Yeah.
So if you get your health high enough, your total health high enough, it makes Death Defiance like super good, because if you have 200 health or something, you heal to like 80 with Death Defiance.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really good.
So yeah, I mean, it really makes a huge difference in it, and especially in like a 120 heat run, it can be the difference between, like, you know, you get 3 hits until you die, and you get like 4 or 5 hits until you're dead, you know, or you get like a few extra hits.
Yeah.
And each one makes such a big difference.
Oh man, I'll tell you this, I'm not making it out of Tartarus today.
Yeah. It's looking pretty gloomy here.
I'm the one health hero.
You got a shot. You got a shot.
Yeah, as long as I just
can-
don't get hit
if-
from here to the
If you happen to encounter a well with a Death Defiance in it, you could purchase that, for
True.
example. That's what I spend my money on in I'm doing high heat runs. It's just Death Defiance essentially.
Madcar asks, if you go back to developing games like you did before Hades, what do you think you'll miss most from early access development?
I think not having to be super secretive about what we're working on is really nice. That's super fun. And it's something that we've never experienced before, because everything else we've ever done has been like,
What's new, man?
really, we've been hush until we announce, and then after the announce, we're still pretty close to the vest about the actual thing people are going to play. So I think that aspect of this has been really fun and interesting, and being able to sort of
If it's punishment you want,
put, you know,
how
kind
am
of
I to say no?
do a little bit of content, see the actual real-time reaction to it, tune it, tweak it, you know, all that stuff. I mean, it's been really useful,
Here's my way.
especially from a gameplay standpoint, to be able to tune the content in that way. It's been really cool. And so yeah, if we do go back to developing
Confident.
games the way that we have in the past, that would certainly be an aspect of it that would be missed for sure.
Speaking of which, are there any hints you can give us for next update?
No. So I mean, you only got to wait like 3 weeks. You know, so
3 whole weeks?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. I feel you. Yeah, no, I mean, I know what you're saying. It's yeah, I don't even know.
Yeah.
There'll be stuff. There'll be more stuff. That's a hint. There's just gonna be stuff. It's gonna include things. There'll be stuff in it with more things.
Wow, big promises coming out here.
Yes, I'm a veritable Peter Molyneux of promises today.
But yeah, I totally understand. I was just wishful thinking.
Yeah. No, I got you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things. When we're ready to put it out there, we will. And of course, you know, the way that this development cycle works is stuff changes quickly. And something that we're intending to include today, you know, in a couple of weeks, who knows how much of it will remain in the update and how much of it will be pushed back to a different update, and you know, so mostly the reason that we want to be pretty close to the chest about some of that stuff for at least a little bit is because it's not really set in stone yet, you know. Well, there's a chance. Looks like you may make it out of Tartarus. We'll see.
There we go.
Hey, you got it.
Yeah, that was a perfect Meg fight, actually.
Yep, didn't get hit. Beautiful.
With plus
I love it when
50% speed
when
and
that
plus 50% enemies. I don't know if that affects the Meg fight.
It does. Oh yeah, the 50% speed, and I think the enemies do. Well, I think it maybe just affects the cap. I'm not really sure. I guess it would affect it if you were killing the enemies, if you're like worried about, if you're concentrating on that, you know.
Yeah. My little sister who watches the stream all the time.
Yeah.
She has dubbed her invincibility the Meg Egg.
Meg egg, nice. I like that.
I hate it when she has the Meg Egg.
You know, just you gotta, if you want to have a staged, interesting fight, you know, even if you got like OP boon loadout, you know, you gotta get that Meg egg going.
Yeah. Now even the Hydra displays the Meg Egg.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's the Meg. Yeah, it's a Hydra egg. It's the Meg egg.
Next island.
Yeah,
Except
no,
it
you gotta
doesn't fit the Hydra, so it's like a little Hydra helmet.
Yeah, a little Hydra helmet. Yeah, gotta bring that helmet for invincibility. All your invincibility needs.
I gotta say, just to praise the game again.
Sure.
Pushback is a thing that I absolutely love. It's fun to do and it's effective. And it's always so nice in a game where the fun stuff is the effective stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's one thing that I find pretty interesting about the knockback stuff is that it's great for ads, you know, but not great for bosses. And so it's like super effective against random enemies. I mean, yeah, the damage increase is good for the boss, but it's certainly not my choice when I get to a boss, you know?
Yeah.
And so I like there's sort of a different, if you're worried about ads, there's one build or one set of powers that you'd want to take. And if you're worried about bosses and trying to do like tons of damage, you know, you have another set of powers that you need to consider. So yeah. I really like that and think that's an interesting, adds a lot of variety to the decisions that you make on a room-to-room basis.
Onward.
Yeah, it used to be with the Hydra being how it was, that there was no point in building for enemies. You had to build for the bosses and just deal with the enemies. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think to some degree that's still true, just because the bosses are the hard, you know, they're always going to be the hardest thing unless you got plus 50 speed or whatever, you know, the you know, making it to the Hydra with all your death defiances intact on 120 heat doesn't mean you're going to beat the Hydra, you know. Yeah. So
yeah, and I've got the VODs to prove it.
Yes. So you know, you still need to really consider how you're going to deal with the bosses, which I think is a fun, I mean, that's sort of like, that's a thing in Dead Cells as well. It's a thing in other roguelikes, is like, how are you going to deal with the big heavy hitter characters, you know, that you have to face, and that's a consideration. You have to kind of always keep in mind with your build, like, you know, you can always, you know, ooh, oh man, that's rough.
I was hoping you wouldn't see that.
Yeah, after a certain point, you know, after a certain point in Dead Cells, I could consistently get to near the boss, you know, at least, or the boss. But it took me a long time of dying over and over and over again to figure out, oh, okay, I gotta build, like, I gotta really build for this guy specifically, and I can't, you know, I can't mess around here. It's something that's great for mobs or some sort of area damage thing or something. It's just like, you just need damage resistance, and you need, you know, the way I went was like ice grenades and, you know, stuff that reduced the damage that was incoming, so I could live long enough to actually take the dude out.
You think you've a chance in hell without my help? Am I to understand? You made a big mistake there, little Hades. Do you watch?
I gotta say, the voices of the gods are absolutely perfect.
Awesome.
Like, you know, Zeus sounding like the big, you know, all-father thing, and Poseidon being the cool uncle.
Yeah. Like kind of loud uncle is sort of how we think of him, you know, like your drunk uncle, maybe, you know, depending on
he's definitely the uncle that would give you a sip of his ambrosia.
Who like, and one funny thing for us is like, he's the only uncle who like comments on, he's the only god who like comments on the gun right now. He's just like, oh, nice, you know. Nice gun.
Yeah, well, I think what he specifically says is, who gave you that?
Yeah,
have fun.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
it's probably fine, don't worry about it. Yeah. That's a lot of fun. It's been really fun working with all the different actors on the gods and everything, and yeah, just the VO for this game has actually just been a lot of fun to work on in general.
Yeah, and especially like when we heard the Dionysus voice.
Yeah.
First, like, he's of course like the total like, what's up, man?
Yeah. He's real chill. Yeah, Dionysus is lots of chill. Unsurprisingly, he would be pretty chill.
And there, yeah. So we got pretty far, but not the best it could have been.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. Yeah.
Yeah, we like to call Poseidon Uncle Yeet around here. Especially if you get him on like the shield attack or something.
Yeah. Awesome.
Come in.
Oh, we got new dialogue with you.
Hey, Orpheus,
look at that.
the resemblance between me and
Well, I don't play the speaking voice of Orpheus.
Yeah, that's right.
I just do the singing. Yeah.
Same god. I love a good feast, don't I?
I
my
love
dog
this
is
nod to
barking.
actual Greek mythology.
Yeah.
I see it. I can see
Yeah, I
it
mean
now.
that's the sort of
I think
idea with
the
this
God of
storyline
Rama
is
you
sort
are
of
intricately linked. It isn't
how
obvious, is it?
how some of these stories that are kind of seemingly ridiculous maybe got distributed or created. You know, what's the genesis for some of this stuff? Hey, so my dog is going nuts.
Oh,
I should probably go
nice. Okay, yeah.
see what's going on with that. But anyway, it's been, I should probably run, but it's been a blast. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This is a dream come true for me. And,
Awesome. Yeah.
You know, I hope this isn't the last time it happens. So.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm happy to talk boons and whatever, whenever. So yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, and put the word out. Anyone at Supergiant Games is welcome in my stream anytime.
Awesome. Yeah, I will pass it along.
Cool. Thank you so much.
All
Darren.
right. Yep. Have a good one.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.